Well, hey there, Jess. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Confident Sober Women podcast. I'm so excited to share our time together. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you share a little bit more about your story, and then we're going to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Shelby. This is like a treat. And I'm not going to lie, I'm like incredibly nervous because as a podcast host, I feel like I'm on the other end. So I even jotted down some notes so I didn't forget, part of my story because it's been a while.
That's okay.
Well,
You're fine.
yeah, well, I'm Jess, and in the sober community, some of you that are listening might know me as kind of the person behind Decidedly Dry. And my story, oh my gosh, I won't go through the whole thing, but some of the big things I wanted to share today was I was a sucker for the mommy wine culture. Drinking wasn't really a big issue in my life growing up. It wasn't until I got older and I just kind of was mimicking, what other people did around me. It just seemed normal. And so I definitely slowly progressed into that, mom that earned that reward at the end of the day, and it was kind of one of those situations where I just kind of got exhausted of the shift. It was like in the morning I was running double digits, I was working out, I was having my green smoothie and, had all full intentions of just staying healthy throughout the whole day. And it was like once 5 o'clock hit, it was out the window. And so the wine was poured, and I just remember waking up day after day, just super disappointed in myself that I couldn't keep that promise to myself. And it just kind of felt like I was two different people for a while. It was like I was fit mom by day, and then by night, I was the wine mom. And so it just kind of got exhausting. And right around, I mean, it wasn't like I just flipped a switch and everything was cured and I just stopped drinking. I got really sober curious for a while there, and it took about a couple of years. I was casually Googling, how much is too much? Do I have a drinking problem? What books are out there? What support could I find? And it was very on the hush hush because I didn't want it to seem like I had, a quote unquote problem or there was something wrong with me. And I remember going to the bookstore and actually purchasing the book, This Naked Mind. And I read it and was just blown away. It was like, oh my gosh, wait, other people wake up at 3 a.m. too, And so it was just, it was very eye opening. And so then my curiosity really started to grow, and I started to kind of research, if there were different communities out there, because being a fitness instructor, I was all about community. I was all about, a challenge and checking a box each day when you accomplish something. And so I actually stumbled upon SoberSys, and SoberSys ran this monthly challenge, and it was way back when she first started. So it was very small. And I was like, oh, a 21-day reset. I can do this. I mean, I do 30-day squat challenges and 30 days of planks. And so that was kind of where I got my start of my alcohol-free journey, was with that group.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your
Yeah.
story. And This Naked Mind is a phenomenal um, book/program. I think she even has a podcast.
Yeah.
There's so many wonderful resources similar to that, right? So many sober communities now. I got sober kind of a while ago, and we really didn't have any choices besides AA and rehab, and that's
Right.
fine. The 12 steps worked for me for a really long time, and then I just layered on other complementary types of work to help me kind of grow and develop in my sobriety. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the kind of the mommy wine culture, because like I said, I got sober like long before that. And actually I didn't have any kids yet. I got pregnant when I was 6 months sober, and then I had 3 kids in 4 years. But I missed that kind of glitter cup mommy wine time, sitting on the, by the fire pit, stage. I'm sure that was happening in my day. It just wasn't called all that. We
Sure.
didn't have social media to glamorize it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, that time. And I'm just curious if you could say a little bit more about what that was, what that was like for you, like actually
Absolutely.
living in that, before we start talking more about recovery.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, like I said, it felt normal. Social media very much glamorized it. It was very much the you whine, I whine, mom had a long day. Well, she deserves this reward of a glass of wine. And I remember any event, any social gathering or anything always revolved around alcohol. It was the mommy play dates. It was the, oh, we're going trick or treating. Let's, pack our Yeti full of, a cocktail and walk around. It was just very normal. And so there weren't ever any flags until later in my journey. It just very much felt like all my girlfriends and I didn't see an issue. And so, between social media, just your friend groups, um, conversations that were had. I remember kind of when I was just starting to get curious, I'd casually mention things like, if I was out on a run with a girlfriend, I'd be like, oh, I went, a week without drinking wine this week. And looking back on it now, like at the time, I didn't probably think like it was a big deal. It was kind of like, oh, this is just kind of cool. I feel I'm sleeping better and I'm, making this great health goal or health accomplishment. But looking back, I'm kind of wondering if it was a little bit of a not cry for help, maybe someone to say like, oh, me too. Like I kind of feel like I should
Mhm.
remove that as well, if that makes sense. So um it was a different world, and I think I just kind of had my blinders on because as we know, when you become a mom, it's stressful. It's hard. It's this whole new role and it's the most beautiful, wonderful gift in the world. But with it comes different stressors and exhaustion and all the other things.
It's true. And, it's interesting when you were talking, I was thinking, and I don't know the exact statistic. I think this is fairly correct, but I just learned somebody said something to me recently that like 1/3 of people don't even drink at all. Like 1/3 of the population in the world or
It's
the country.
wild.
And so it's interesting when we think of it that way, because what we're saying is the people that we're with, we're doing all those same things. Like, so like,
Right.
where were the women that weren't drinking? Like where were the moms that were kind of working through it without it, which
Yeah.
we know there must have been some, but we tend to hang out with people who are doing things similar to us, and whether it's by design or it just by choice, we tend to be with people who are very similar. So I know that was an interesting time, but for you it became problematic, right? You started to
Hmm.
realize like
Hmm.
this isn't really serving me. So through that process of this naked mind and like the you're dabbling with sober curiosity and things, how were you able to, like, do you have, because this is an interesting conversation too for people
Yeah.
who like me who got sober at a different time and then today, do you identify with any of the labels for yourself, or how do you identify, I guess, when it comes to this part of your life?
Yeah. Great question. I didn't really want to put a label on it in the beginning until I really started hearing some of the labels that I might have related to. Jolene Park, I remember watching her TED talk, and when she described gray area drinking, I was like, oh, that I identify with. Like that very much is something that I relate to. That feeling of being just very high functioning and from the outside, it not looking problematic
Hmm.
until you really kind of dive in and look on the inside like, no, this doesn't feel right. This isn't nourishing to me. This doesn't feel like it's in line with all my goals. So in answer to your question, I think the label that I identify the most with would be gray area drinking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, today though, even when you as an alcohol free person.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's just very interesting, and I don't necessarily think that we need to have labels, but I describe myself as an alcoholic. Some people feel like that's definitely not something they can relate to. Some people are like alcohol free or substance use disorder.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting evolution. I'm a therapist too, so I get to watch
Yeah.
this from like that standpoint too of how the mental health community is evolving in this way, and they definitely are. And
Yeah.
language around it is one of the things that is a hot topic right now to reduce the stigma, particularly
Yeah.
for people who, do have pretty significant addiction issues. So to help them feel a little bit more welcomed into the community of recovery as a person versus like an addict, that seems like a problem versus being a solution. Like you're someone with a substance use disorder, or you're someone seeking substance abuse treatment. So it's
Absolutely.
been an interesting evolution, I think, in the society, and but also in the mental health world, and in what we call it kind of this modern day recovery time.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things that I think is so cool is just the process of, like, early sobriety has its special needs, right? Like I always think that's
Hmm.
like we have special needs during that time. It's a very sensitive time, it's requires a lot of support, and for some of us who are really like, it's drink or die,
Right.
if we drink we die kind of thing. It's serious, and some other people who are just trying to manage difficult emotions and like figure out how do we do this life and socialize without alcohol. But once we get to that 1 year, kind of 1 year markish, to then many more, like that 1 to 5 year mark, really, uh, there's an awakening that happens. It's a
Hmm.
time of a shifting identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be now as a sober person? What do I like? All of these kinds of things. I'm curious if you could say more like how things were different for you after you kind of reach that 1 year mark in sobriety.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because I think about that a lot, how that first year was very much, and for me personally, just survival. It was very much like, what tools can I put in place to just skip that witching hour, to get past that 5 o'clock hump? So that whole year was very much survival. And once you hit a year, it was exactly kind of as you described it. It was more, okay, we're doing this. This is me. Like, this is a new identity. This is something I identify as a non-drinker. And what does this look like now? I've done every day, every holiday, every milestone, so far, and what is ahead. And so for me personally, I think my next year of sobriety was very much healing and being of service, because coming from, like I said, a fitness background, everything I've always done has been very kind of service based, helping women. And so it was very important to me to kind of share my story out loud so that others could be, inspired, or maybe, discover that they were a little curious about sobriety too. So I found myself really trying to find ways to reach other women and just let them know that they're not alone. So, actually, a year into my sobriety was when I released a journal, because I found journaling very therapeutic and helpful in my sobriety, just kind of documenting how my days were going, how I was feeling. I wasn't a long journal entry person, a busy mom of two boys. It was very much just okay, this is my day. This is how I'm feeling. Who could I reach out to today if I, am feeling kind of crummy later? And so I actually designed a journal. And so, again, just kind of that theme of helping people and finding different ways to be creative was very helpful for me.
I love that. Journaling is so powerful for so many. And I hear that as a strategy from a ton of people. I know for me, it's not, journaling is not a part of, isn't a tool that I really enjoy, as far as, if I were to pick one, I wouldn't
Yeah.
probably choose that. However, I'd have done it, and I see the value. I just, for some reason, it's just not my bag. But I love that you're referring to it as a creative resource, because I think something that we kind of get to do when we change our lives in this way is to play a little bit, like to figure out
Hmm.
what it is that we like. And I hear from a lot of women, they're like, well, I don't even know what I like to do now. Like, what am I supposed to do now as a
Right.
sober person? And a lot of times what I'll say to them is, like, an activity we'll do is, I want you to think back to when you were a kid. Like, what did you like to do? Were you an outdoorsy kid? Did you like Legos? Were you
Hmm.
coloring? What were the kinds of activities? And there's oftentimes a way to translate that into an adult um approved activity, or at
Hmm.
least similar. And obviously writing is one way to do that, similar to even coloring or drawing or painting, right? We can
Yeah.
express ourselves through using words, and that is so cool. And did you find that, how has that evolved for you, that experience with
Yeah. Yeah.
writing?
It's been a really cool, I don't want to say like addition, but kind of an addition to who I am. Growing up, I don't remember being very creative. I don't remember taking art classes except for maybe once as an elective in college. But in early sobriety, that first year, I definitely found myself needing to have my hands busy. And so I did discover like watercolors just by doing, different YouTube free, videos and stuff, but it just progressed. And I think creativity, it kind of, I don't know how to put it. It allows us to kind of quietly build our self-esteem too. There's this amazing, experience or it's amazing to look back now and see kind of how I grew more confident in my art, through this whole process as well, because I was creating things. I was, getting better. And so it's funny how our two journeys can kind of grow alongside each other.
Mhm.
And the journal was a really cool piece too, because it was all, things that I was looking for out in the world that I couldn't find, but I could just be the problem solver. Does that make sense? I kind of went all over the place with that,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's definitely been an exciting thing to just kind of add to my wheelhouse. It was a sober tool, but now it's just something that I really enjoy doing. It's a cool hobby to kind of, do every day, and also be off a screen in front of my boys. That's another perk too. Just that
Yes.
example we're setting.
Oh, I love that you said that part because I kind of forget that. But it's, and again, my kids are a little older than yours, or 20, 18, and 16. So they were raised in a slightly different time, although we had some screens that came into as they grew up. But as little ones, it wasn't as big of a part of our life. But even today, I feel like I become keenly aware of making sure that um, I am being a living example of different things. Now they're going to do what they want. I get it. They're
Right.
older, but also just to let them know that we don't have to fill every minute and every second with our phone. Like we can stand in a line. I mean, I'm just as guilty. I like to look at my phone when
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything, but we can, stand in a line at a doctor's office or a grocery store and just look around.
Hmm.
We can look at people. We can even talk to somebody. We can, hey, how are you? I love your handbag. That's so pretty.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that? I think that those kinds of skills, they need to see us doing that because that's how they learn how to just conversate, and
Yeah.
pleasantries, or to have you look at them, you know,
Yeah.
be able to look at their faces and not be bothered with their screen all the time. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah. It's been
Um,
really important because I think there's a difference between, what is it? Walking the walk, or, that old saying, walk the talk the walk,
yeah.
whatever it is. But I can sit there and preach to them about, hey, we got to turn the TV off. No more video games. Let's do this. But if I've got my laptop open and I'm on my phone, I don't think that's fair. I want to make sure that I'm being responsible with what I'm exposing them to too, and that they can look at me and be like, oh, well, actually, mom's over there drawing or sketching, or, I could do that too, because they do see everything.
Oh,
And, when you are engaged with them and doing something healthy and fun, like they want to do it with you. There's
yeah.
so much of a difference than, I've noticed if I just plop out a bin of Legos and have it out, like they might come and play with it. But if I sit down with them, I mean, they're entertained for hours.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And
So,
also you're in all that modeling too, you're helping them to have the really coping skills, to be
mhm.
able to say like, and even while you're playing, if you want to, like, you could be the therapist a little. You're like, isn't this so
Absolutely.
soothing? Just sitting here putting these, isn't this so cool how relaxing this feels, putting these
Yeah.
Legos together? Or it's so neat how, like, when I'm doing this drawing, I'm just lost,
Yep.
in my own thoughts, or I don't have any thoughts, I'm just I'm just here in the present moment. It really helps me to feel calm. So like those are such great life skill tools for coping to give to your children at such a young age that you're also doing. So kudos to
Absolutely.
you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious if how things are going with your mommy friends now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going good. I mean, they all knew me as how do I put this? I'm not stubborn, but I am. Like once I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. And so it was no surprise that when, Jess decided to quit alcohol and she really stuck with it, like it's just not a thing, and I think we are pretty fortunate to be living in this time where it is becoming more normal. It is, you're running into people that have all these delicious mocktails, all these stores that are carrying options, which I don't remember it being like that even 4 years ago when I really kind of dove in. It's just been in these last couple of years where, I mean, I'm going to the store and I'm seeing some of my favorite non-alcoholic drinks that I follow, on social media that I'd usually have to order from their website. And so I think it's been a cool transition just to see my friends just adjust to. I mean, with that, it is interesting because you do have some friendships that change. I think, relationships change over the years normally as you age, but I think also through sobriety, it really opened my eyes to some friendships that kind of just revolved around that. And so, you know, while some relationships might have kind of fizzled away, some really grew
Mm,
and grew really strong. And kind of going off of that, I discovered this whole world of sober women through sharing out loud, which, I mean, I have some of my closest, most supportive, amazing friends that I literally have never met face to face, like, or in person, I should say, that I've met through some of these communities that I've been a part of. And you can't even put it into words. It's pretty life changing when you develop these friendships, especially with women who are going through the same thing and just get it. So that has been really cool just to see all of these other friendships and relationships blossom out of this one decision.
mm. That is so cool because that's one thing that I hear from a lot of people um, who are. I don't work with people who are new in sobriety typically, but even in the groups that I'm in, or even after, people do worry or wonder about socializing as a sober person. I mean, it's kind of daunting. We live in a world
Hmm.
that's really obsessed with alcohol, especially for women. It's highly marketed and pushed towards women, and so it's sort of like, well, what will this be like?
Yeah.
Who will still like me? How will I go to a Christmas party and these things? Um, and so socializing in sobriety is different, especially early on. I don't know if that was, I mean, and that's why I was curious, since you were such a part of a group that definitely knew you as that and was
Yeah.
very similar to you. How is it now?
Yeah. Well, and one thing I didn't share about my journey. So my last day one was December 7th of 2019. So coming off of that, I went into 2020. I went into the pandemic. My whole first year of sobriety was kind of at home,
Mm,
which I know that wasn't a similar story, for a lot of people that were stuck at home. That's where a lot of people, their drinking really amped up because they were stuck at home. So I think that was kind of a quiet gift for me. I was stuck at home, which meant I didn't have to go to all the parties. I didn't have to go to,
mm,
the showers or the girls' night out. I was at home. And so it really worked in my favor to have that be my first year because I didn't have to say no, which is really hard for people in the beginning because they really feel, or at least a lot of people I've talked to, they're people pleasers. They care about being with their friends. They're worried about, not going to these big things. And so saying no is very hard. So that was kind of a gift in the beginning. And yeah, but back to your question, everything has worked out just great with my friends now. They really are supportive. They accept it. And like I said, I think because of the world we're living in right now, where sobriety and the sober curious kind of movement has really amplified, um, it's been very, you know, easy to make this transition.
that's awesome. And I agree because we have so much exposure now. It's
Hmm.
just constant. I feel like everywhere we turn, you mentioned about the mocktails, and I'm friends with probably a lot of the same women that you are,
Yeah.
who are doing incredible things with building sober social events to sober drinks and mocktails. People who like Susie Streelman and I were chatting on the podcast actually about really being a change maker when it comes to um, really speaking up and encouraging establishments that we attend or functions that we're going to have better options for us than just soda or juice or water.
Yeah.
And I love that because I was like, you know what? Wow, what can I do when I'm out? Like a lot of the times we go out to restaurants because we usually go when we do go out, it's like decent, restaurants. They do have nice mocktails on their menu. And
Yeah.
it's been really refreshing to see. But I've been speaking up. Like we were traveling this weekend with my son on some college visits, and we went to two different places. And I kind of just said like, hey, can you ask the bartender to make me a sugar-free mocktail, something with, fruit or whatever. And they're like, absolutely. So I feel like if we do more of that when we're out, it's just going to become very normalized. And
Yes.
people are then going to be like, oh, a few people have asked that this week. Maybe we should put some on
Yeah.
our menu.
Yeah. And honestly, I spent years working in a restaurant as a server, and servers want to hear that because the last thing they want is for the whole group to get waters. I mean, they want your bill to have drinks on it. So, I mean, coming out and saying, hey, what can they make me? Can you make me, a virgin margarita? Like they're
Uh-huh.
happy to do that because, let's be honest, that bumps up the bill. So just be brave and just ask for it because it feels good to have something other than water in your hand when you're in those kinds of functions too.
I agree, especially like tonight. I have the wonderful pleasure of attending a Christmas party for one of the banks that my husband does business with, and it's bank people are very fancy,
Yeah.
which I'm the opposite of fancy. But
Same.
like, and so I have to dress and be present myself typically how I'm not in my normal life.
Right.
But having a drink in a glass that looks like a drink is kind of nice because I'm not ashamed of my alcoholism. I'm telling anybody. Obviously, I'm right here telling you all about it. But
Yeah.
when you're in a social setting, just being able to kind of look like the rest of the people, it's really nice. So it's been an amazing couple of years to watch this evolution. It's just going to get better. I was thinking about that with my own children who are older. I'm like, they are going to grow up in a completely different world. I mean, obviously, alcohol is there, but they're going to grow up seeing a lot of women not be drinkers.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, that is going to be cool.
Really cool. It's really exciting. And just hearing, even my boys, they're only 9 and 11, but hearing kind of their thoughts towards alcohol, even now, my older one the other day said, I'm never going to have a drink or something. I'm never going to have alcohol. And I'm like, I love that. Like, you never know, things might change, but I love that you already are kind of in that mindset of like, but that's not healthy for me. Or mom doesn't drink, so that's not weird if I don't drink. So it is really cool to just hear kind of their thoughts and know where they're going.
Absolutely. And also modeling things like I have done obviously in the last 2 decades, I've done a lot of things. And even with my older kids, like we go to a lot of concerts, we take our kids to concerts. We went to Nashville this summer for our vacation, which is a huge, drinking party town.
Yeah.
And like I went to the Jazz Fest twice in New Orleans. I don't necessarily recommend New Orleans. It's not the super friendliest to non-drinkers, although it's fine. I mean, I did
Yeah.
it. But like I can go have fun and do those things. I just know how to
Yeah.
handle myself, and I just know how to take good care of myself and have healthy boundaries and have a plan so that if I'm not feeling great or whatever, I can, kind of escape that situation. But it doesn't prevent me from doing things. And I think that's what's really important to model for our kids, that like lots and lots of people don't drink alcohol. And
Exactly.
for a variety of reasons, they just don't. And I didn't know that when I was growing up until I
Right.
got sober for a while. And I was like, oh, there's some people that like just don't do this, and I
Yeah.
couldn't relate to that at all. But now that we can model that for our kids, like, yeah, we can do all the things of our life
Yep.
and never take a drink. It's pretty cool.
Never. It's so fun. Yeah.
So
It's not
fun.
boring. You're not missing out on anything.
So I'm curious, how did you decide to start your podcast? And I love your name, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I actually never considered it. It was not even on my radar. Like I was just doing my thing. And it wasn't until I was an avid listener of Recovery Happy Hour with Trisha Lewis. And I listened to her podcast, I mean, throughout my whole journey. And I was out on a run. I feel like I can remember the exact spot, the exact like route that I was taking. And she just dropped this episode that said, hey, this is the last one. And I was going, what? Like you can't stop producing. Like this is the show I listen to. And I know everybody who listens to podcasts, they do. They just kind of latch on to those ones that speak to you or the style that you like best. And for me, hers was the show that I listened to. I loved hearing other people's stories, kind of like what we're doing here today. And so when she said she was not going to be producing it anymore, She even went on to say, like, if you are in this sober community, if you feel like you have something to share, like podcasting has been such a gift. And she kind of just planted that seed. And so it was very wild. I think it was that day I actually emailed her, and I had been on her show as a guest before, but didn't know her very well personally. And I just kind of just went for it. I sent her an email and I was like, I'm thinking about it. And she kind of coached me through how to set it up and everything. And I just kind of jumped in with both feet. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, where it was going to take me, but I just knew how much I had benefited from hearing other people's stories. And I didn't want people to miss out on that. So I was like, well, I like to talk and I like to share stories. So let's just go for it.
Yeah, I love that. It is a fun way,
Yeah.
and it's such a great way um to do so many things, right? We can
Yeah.
spread information, we can teach things, we can create conversations that feel relatable to other folks. This one little platform can provide so many things in just 35, 45 minutes or something, and it's
Yeah.
all free to them to be able to
Yes.
consume at any time. So you can do it by yourself, you can do it with a guest. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So
And it
good
helped
for you.
me too, honestly. I didn't expect it to help my sober journey. Like I felt like I was kind of checking that box of service. But every time I would hop off a call or hop off a chat, I would feel like I felt stronger in my own sobriety. Like it was
Mhm.
holding me accountable as well, if that makes sense.
It does. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? Like what's on the horizon? What are you working on?
Oh man, I need to kind of reel it in. I have this tendency of like wanting to do all the things, and it just makes my husband want to yank out all the hair that's left on his head. He's just like, you don't need to do anything more, babe. But honestly, I just want to keep up with the podcast. That is one of my big goals, is just to keep producing. It's a lot of work for those of you out there that are not familiar with what gets put into a podcast. So I think just continuing to produce and have these conversations would be a really great accomplishment for me. I think in January, I don't want to say I think, I know in January, I'm going to run kind of a movement challenge because I've found a lot of benefit from finding time to move and be creative and just all of those good things that make us feel good. When we're removing something bad, I like to always say, you got to replace it with something healthy, something with that ing that is not drinking, whether it be walking or painting or exercising, things that make you feel good. So I'll be rolling out a challenge in January that I'll run through my Substack. But yeah, just staying alcohol free and soaking up these special times with my boys.
I know you're in the good times. School
Real
age,
fun.
school age time is nice. It's
Yeah.
fun. Well, I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that you are doing that movement challenge. I talk a lot about movement and physical activity in my work as well, just because all things health, mental, emotional, spiritual, all the things combine to create one healthy person, right? So
Yeah.
we can't just exercise, we can't just eat healthy, we can't just go to therapy. We have to create a package, right?
Hmm.
A formula, a program for ourselves, that a design for living that really works, right? And so that
Exactly.
looks like all of those things incorporated, but it's also needs to be sustainable, right? So we need to create small baby steps consistently done over time to create the big transformation versus like trying to be like, well, I'm going to be at the gym 6 days a week, like it's resolution
Yes.
time coming up. So I'm feeling a little anxious about my gym getting filled up with
Always.
resolutioners because I'm like, oh, actually, my son just said that the other day. He's like, we got to get our gains on because the resolutioners are coming. I'm like, I know, buddy. We'll
It's
do our
so
best.
true.
We'll do our best. And kudos to them for being there, and a lot of them probably do stick, but it's not sustainable to put out something that you're just not willing to do. But if you did say
Absolutely.
like, hey, I think I can commit to 3 days a week, and that feels really good to you, and that's something that you will do, then that's going to benefit you. That's what works when you stick to it. And then when you do what you say you're going to do, you train your brain to know that it can trust you, that you do what you
Yeah.
say. And so it's better to do that in a small, sustainable way, right?
Yes, yes. Just making sure it's realistic, and attainable. Don't
Absolutely.
overdo it.
All the things.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really loved our time together, and thank you for sharing your story and for being another podcast host, another resource for women or all people who want to come and learn about what it's like to live alcohol free. There's so much that gets talked about with this. There's managing big emotions, from socializing, which we just talked about here, to just coping skills, even through journaling or art or
Yeah.
creativity. There's so much to learning how to live life on life's terms without a drink or drug. And it doesn't have to be hard or complicated, but it's not always easy. So doing it with support is a lot better. So thank you so much for your time. Where do you like people to get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is going to be decidedlydry.substack.com. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, so I come back for a few months and then I disappear for a month. But you can find me at Decidedly Dry there as well.
Okay, great. I'll make sure I link to those in the show notes below. And I look forward to our paths crossing again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.